Good afternoon. A very warm welcome from Arati Narayanan to all of you to this seminar on overview of trade, shipping and ports presented by Captain Menezes. This joint event with Indian Maritime University was initiated by Dr. Malini Shankar, Vice Chancellor, Indian Maritime University. Thank you, Madam, for your lead in enhancing the relationship between ICS and IMU. We look forward to many more such events in the future. Mr. Ravi Tite, FICS Chairman, ICS East India, is Director, Shiksha Logistics and All Trans Lines Private Limited, Singapore. With an extensive experience in shipping, transport, chartering, and logistics sectors spanning 31 years, he has the ability to innovate and optimize resources, thereby increasing profits. And I now request him to welcome the gathering.
Thank you, Arti, for the nice opening remarks this evening on the program, and also for introducing me. Before I start, I should actually take this opportunity to formally introduce our committee member, Arti Narayan. She's an honors graduate in law, postgraduate in maritime law, University of Southampton, presently employed with ABS Marine Services Private Limited as a manager, legal and HR. She has been exposed to various verticals within the company: recruitment of ship and shore personnel, safety, quality systems, purchase, finance management. Presently, she is in charge of administrative and legal affairs. Arti is also a national treasurer of Vista, India. But not many know that she is also a wonderful dancer. Lord Jeffrey Mountevans, Dr. Malini Madam, Dr. K.M. Shivakolundu, my colleagues in ICS committee, members of ICS East India branch, members of ICS other branches worldwide, all the guests connected virtually. Greetings and a very happy afternoon to everybody. We had a very successful ICS East India's 25th annual day, which was conducted virtually on 11th December. We had a privilege of privilege of having Madam Malini Shankar as the chief guest on that day. Taking on from there, Madam had suggested a session, and accordingly this theme, overview of trade, shipping and ports, was finalized. We will have Captain John Menezes, who is the Secretary of ICS East India branch, present the theme in a short while. We will also have Captain Ramakrishnan, our former Chairman of ICS East India, who will handle the question answer sessions. A brief note about ICS. ICS was established in 1911, and it is an internationally recognized professional body devoted to promoting ethics and professionalism on global basis in the various disciples of commercial shipping by setting the very high standards through its members who are qualified professionals of international merit. The aim of ICS has been to build a global base of duly qualified and competent members who can seek membership only after passing the professional qualifying examination and satisfying other evaluation criteria. Provide high-class education and training to cover various facets of commercial shipping to those seeking a career in shipping industry and international trade. To add value to the shipping industry by updating the latter's knowledge and professional skills by conducting international level seminars and workshops on very relevant topics. East India branch of ICS, we have completed 25 glorious years. We are fortunate to have with us still the founding members who are very active and keep guiding us day in and day out. ICS East India has emerged as one of the most active and vibrant branches of ICS globally, with monitoring ICS activities at Cochin, Delhi, Mangalore, Tuticorin, Vizag, and also Calcutta. ICS East India branch have been well supported by organizations like CII, IMU, government authorities like customs, port, legal fraternities, various trade associations. ICS East India have been knowledge partners in organizing many events in India, and which has been very successful in spreading knowledge and education. Yes, some of the events conducted by ICS in the last 2 years. A workshop on insurance and cargo claims along with Karaikal Port. A workshop on last mile connectivity challenges in Chennai shipping trade along with CII. Winds of change, challenges to shipping and the way ahead, a panel discussion on blue economy and challenges to overcome, a seminar in Tuticorin, a seminar along with Vizag Container Terminal sometime back during this pandemic period. ICS have also forged an MOU with IMU, which benefits the students of IMU to take exams and also become members and great professionals in shipping. ICS motto, our word, our bond, ensures that the members are of very high degree of integrity, which is the need of the hour, especially when shipping has become a global and a very complex business. With this brief speech, I have great pleasure in welcoming Lord Mountevans and Madam Malini Shankar for this session today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman, for that warm welcome and giving us an overview of the ICS activities. We have amidst us an erudite personality, Lord Geoffrey Mountevans, President, ICS. Lord Mountevans' maritime career began in 1972 as a graduate trainee with the international shipbroker Clarksons, where after initial training, he worked first in the tanker department, moving to the gas division in 1979 and retiring from the business in 2017. He is very proud to be an honorary fellow of the Institute, an honorary life member of the Baltic Exchange, a younger brother of Trinity House, and an honorary captain in the Royal Naval Reserve. He chairs Maritime London, the trade association promoting maritime professional business services of London and the UK. Lord Mountevans is a council member and former chairman of Maritime UK, which brings together the UK's shipping, ports, marine manufacturing and engineering, professional business services, and leisure marine industries to promote the sector, influence government, and drive growth. He chaired the Maritime Growth Study, Keeping Britain Competitive for the UK government, published in September 2015. He served for 11 years as an elected alderman in the City of London. He was elected Sheriff 2012-13 and the 688th Lord Mayor of London 2015-16. May I request Lord Mountevans, President of the ICS, to address us.
Thank you very much, Arathi. You've made my day and my week, actually, by calling me erudite. I think in this company with the distinguished academics, I feel $1 million now, so thank you very much for that. So, Dr. Shankar, Vice Chancellor, Dr. Siva Kholundu, and members of the IMU faculty, Chairman Ravi Tite, ICS East India Branch Chairman, and fellow members of the Institute, Captain John Menezes, Secretary, fellow guests, students. Good afternoon. It's a great honor and privilege for me to join your meeting today. India is such an important country in the maritime context, and the excellence and contribution of your professionals at sea and ashore is recognized worldwide. And because there's such an important influence, economy, and democracy, which we set such store by. As president of the ICS, it is a particular pleasure for me to meet, albeit remotely, with the vibrant East India branch, and congratulations on your recent 25-year annual day. Greetings to you from our chairman, Susan Otway, who's sorry she can't be with you today, but I'm happy to report she's much improved after a bout of COVID, and where your wishes, by the way, from the branch were communicated to her and warmly appreciated. Also, greetings from Deputy Chairman Glenn Murphy and from Interim Director Robert Hill, who I know many of you will know from his time as Chairman, as membership officer. I want, first of all, to address some remarks to the students, both IMU and ICS. This is a challenging time for shipping, with the pandemic impacting on world trade, and especially with severe problems for seafarers. Hundreds of thousands unable to be repatriated to their homes, huge numbers equally unable to join their vessels. Britain has been at the front of efforts to resolve the crisis, and some of you will know that the meeting at the IMO in late autumn last year. Sadly, it's still a huge problem, and I just hope that everyone will continue their rigorous efforts to remedy this. And now, additionally, we must all press for early vaccination of seafarers. This is also a time of enormous transition in our industry. with artificial intelligence and disruptive technologies coming fast down the tracks towards us. Of course, we face huge and very costly action also to decarbonize and clean up shipping. An enormous technical challenge and an enormous financial challenge. Estimated at between, well, I've heard it estimated at between 1.1 and 1.4 trillion dollars. But I think if you add on some other factors, it's also been estimated it might be $500 million more. So it could be between sort of 1.5 and 1.9 trillion dollars in the years between 2030 and 50. So this is an enormous burden for the industry, and in fact, of course, all of us ultimately to resolve. You hear I want to say to all the students particularly, don't forget when you hear someone criticizing our industry for its footprint, we are of course still far cleaner than most existing alternatives, if indeed they can be considered alternatives. We're far cleaner than aviation, of course, and also trucks. Really only electric is significantly cleaner. We can be very proud, ladies and gentlemen, of our industry. I was 45 years, as you heard, with Clarkson's, first in tankers and then in gas. In a speech I made in 2007, it's quite an interesting statistic. 1 ton of cargo was carried by sea for every man, woman, and child on the planet. Now, well, the last date I have is for 2019. I think, yes, 2019, it was 1.5 tons of cargo for every man, woman, and child on the planet. And ladies and gentlemen, think about how the world population has grown in those 14 years. Our industry moves millions of tons of cargo safely and economically around the globe and facilitates in excess of 80%, and sometimes estimates go 85, 90%, hard to establish, but it's at least 80% without any doubt, of international trade, something again to be proud of. I would like to say to all the students, and I look forward very much to this cohort making your contribution to our important industry and your impact. And now I would like to tell you something about the ICS and to salute the branch committee and membership of the East India branch. The Institute was founded in the Baltic Exchange in 1911. So this year we are, 110 years old. And we were awarded a Royal Charter in 1920, so that last year was quite a year when we started of the Royal Machinery. To be a Royal Charter organization is something very special, and it's quite a select and an honor. It requires high standards of governance and performance, and we're proud of that. Our motto, as you heard from Ravi, is "My word, my bond." Only a fellow of the Institute can call themselves a chartered shipbroker. We are an examination institute and a membership organization with a strong network. Some 4,000 individual members and over 400 company members. And this is supported by 26 branches worldwide, and that's expanding gradually where appropriate. We actually have a branch in development at the moment, and we brought one into the organization fully in 2019. We have 14 teaching centers, and in summary, this is a meaningful qualifications from the Institute with a membership of a global network. We are internationally reputable and lay stress on ethics. And I must tell you, this was very important when I was very honored and excited to be invited to be vice president with the potential to be president. It was the emphasis that the Institute lays on ethics as a broker that I thought was very important, because some of you will have experience of some of your competitors. And I was so pleased to hear, Ravi talking about the sort of mentoring. We're so responsible for developing, the right qualities, the right training, the right ethics in people who transact such an important role in this industry. In concluding, I want to thank and give great credit to the East India branch for all you do to equip, train, and build our young brokers and other shipping professionals. Madam Vice Chancellor, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and I wish you all a very successful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mountevans, for sharing us your thoughts. It has been an honor to have you here with us. Guest of honor, Dr. Malini Shankar, Vice Chancellor, Indian Maritime University, needs no introduction, but as always, we love to hear more about her. She is an IAS officer of 1984 batch, Maharashtra cadre, and was nominated by the IMU as an honorary member of the Board of Directors of the World Maritime University. She obtained her doctoral degree in institutional economics from the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, and management degree from the Asian Institute of Management, Manila, Philippines. She was selected in February 2020 as one of the 7 global recipients of the AAA Award by the Asian Institute of Management, Manila, Philippines. She is the first Indian woman to receive the award. Dr. Shankar passionately believes in systems improvement, e-governance, policy reforms, and capacity building. I request Dr. Malini Shankar to address the gathering.
And thank you, Aarti, for that warm introduction. Lord Jeffrey Mountevans, President of the ICS, Mr. Retd, Chairman of the ICS of East India Chapter, members of the ICS, my colleagues here, and we have a whole, we have faculty, we have students who are listening in on this session. It was my pleasure to be invited by the local chapter of the ICS for their 25th annual day celebrations. And sometimes you attend workshops, you attend meetings, and you wonder what you have taken home. But this was very special. I think there was a huge learning for me from the great presentation that was made by Mr. Menezes on that day. The major take home was, even I hadn't realized that that day I sat and counted 43 stakeholders in 7 or 8 different categories that he laid out in his presentation. So back in the university, when I engaged with the faculty and my team, I think none of us were really aware that there were 43 stakeholders and maybe counting. Maybe some of them were even left out. So that was a starting point. I said, I think we need to learn more about the sector, the expanse of the sector, a 360-degree view of the sector, and more of us, not just the faculty, but every student who enters the portals of the Indian Maritime University, and every student who leaves and prepares himself or herself for a career in the shipping industry has to be aware of the ecosystem in which they work. This is because I firmly believe that we need to have not just graduates who can fill a position in a company or in a government organization, but will actually will turn out to be leaders who will take the shipping sector forward wherever they're working, be it their organization or be it their team. So I'm very delighted to be part of this event today. And as I mentioned, we have faculty and we have non-faculty heads of departments also joining us, and a plethora of students who are listening. For the benefit of the president of the ICS, let me just do a brief of the Indian Maritime University. It's a young institution set up in 2008-9, but the constituents of this university are pretty old. They can date back to mid-1900s. So it's a multi-campus university. We've got, apart from the headquarters, which is in Chennai, we have campus in Chennai, in Kolkata, in Mumbai. There are 2 of them in and around Mumbai, and Cochin and Visakhapatnam. The courses we offer focus very much on the maritime sector, but expand the spectrum includes marine engineering, nautical science, as well as management, but specific to maritime transport and maritime logistics. So, and there is scope for including many more. So I do see synergies between what the ICS offers in terms of education, and I love the emphasis on the ethics part of the mandate of the ICS. Lord Mountevans, I would like to recall and and share with you that the Indian Maritime University does have a memorandum of understanding with the ICS headquarters in London. which dates back to about 3 to 4 years. And I would like to see, with your active collaboration and cooperation, this MOU being activated to achieve its maximum potential. And together, we would like to explore how to take it forward to the benefit of everybody, every single stakeholder who's part of the shipping sector, especially, of course, for the students and the stakeholders of the Maritime University. So we would like to explore joint workshops, short-term courses which are of mutual interest, as well as some internships for our students. The challenges of the pandemic have been many for shipping, for crew, as well as for students. We've had challenges in admissions, conducting workshop, practical workshop courses, examinations, and the list continues. But I think it is also the pandemic which has opened up opportunities to engage like this, albeit it is a virtual engagement. But I think if but for the pandemic, we would not have been able to do this with the busy lives that every professional needs. To that extent, we should see the upside of the pandemic, and I hope there are upsides to everything, and we can take this partnership forward very actively in the coming months and years. So with this, I would like to thank the President of the ICS for joining us for this event, and I would look forward to his guidance on how to take forward the MOU to the betterment of the shipping and maritime industry. Thank you very much, and thank you, Aarti, for putting all this together. Thank you, Mr. Retd, for acceding to this program, and we look forward to hearing from Mr. Menezes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Malini Shankar, for all those takeaways. And now for the highlight of the evening. We have Captain John Menezes shedding light on overview of trade, shipping, and ports. But before he does that, a little something about him. Captain John Prasad Menezes served on merchant ships from cadet to master from 1975 to 1990, subsequently moving ashore, being a nautical surveyor, marine consultant, and has risen as expert witness, mediator, and maritime arbitrator at the national and international levels. Presently, Captain Menezes is trustee and member Executive Board of Nautical Institute, independent director on the board of Seven Islands Shipping Limited, Mumbai, and director Mission to Seafarers Association of India, Mumbai. The former positions include President, Canara Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mangalore, trustee of New Mangalore Port Trust, independent director of Mangalore Refinery and Petrochemicals Limited. He has also served as vice chair of the IMU committee of the Nautical Institute, besides many years as executive council member of NI. Captain Menezes has been conferred many fellowships and empaneled with the international arbitration centers at London, Singapore, Dubai, Mauritius, Malaysia, and Beijing, besides India.
Okay.
We request you, sir, to present us with your address. Thank you.
Thank you, Aarti, for the kind words of introduction. And can I have the presentation, please? Chairman Ravi, Chief Guest, Lord Jeffrey Mountevans, Guest of Honor, Dr. Malini Shankar, Vice Chancellor, Indian Maritime University. I see the presence of John Lloyd, CEO of the Nautical Institute, fellow members of the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers, members of the faculty of Indian Maritime University, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, one and all. I take this as a distinct honor and happy privilege to be in the midst of great personalities like Lord Jeffrey Mountevans, as well as Dr. Malini Shankar, the Vice Chancellor of the Indian Maritime University. This is the first joint program between ICS and IMU, and I'm happy that there will be many more and look forward for many more to follow, and it's dedicated to the staff of IMU. I also would like to mention to you that this has been structured in such a way that we will be also covering up trends and stakeholders at the request of the ICS, IMU University. Next slide, please. Friends, if you have to look at the first particular part, that when we have stakeholders of shipping, we have at the building stage, what happens? Before I come to that, let me explain what Alan Marshall, the CEO of Bremer Scope, had mentioned in the introduction to Shipping Forward. He made a very bold statement stating that shipping is the biggest industry. And I would like to explain why. Well, at the building stage itself, you have many naval architects for the design. You have classification societies involved, and you have ship owners. Suppose we have about 100,000 ships floating across the seas. You can just imagine the number of people employed over there. For the ship to be launched, you have ship brokers who may negotiate with the shipyards, as well as the banks who may provide the finances. And at the shipyard, if a car has to undergo 20 assembly lines with hundreds of parts, so you can imagine how many assembly lines and shipyards a shipyard will take, right from steel manufacturer to original equipment manufacturers. And then you have the saloon department where you have rope, soap, and dope to be provided on board a ship. And then for a ship to move across the seas, you have the ships to be manned. You have to have proper training and recruitment for the people to be going on board the ships. And as the delivery at the ship is to be launched, you have agents, pilots, bunkers, suppliers, and even a proper channel, a fairway, a roadway for a vessel to be taken out on the high seas. And all this will happen only if the risk is insured. And you will have a different type of underwriters, perhaps the hull and machinery underwriters, the P&I protection and indemnity underwriters, you have the cargo underwriters, you have the FDD, you have the strike, you have the kidnap and ransom policies. So you have different underwriters who come into the scene. The next particular part I would like to mention is during the operations come the port authorities, the customs, the immigration, the PSC, and the Coast Guards. So you can just imagine the number of people involved in the first part of the stakeholders of the slide. The next slide, please. And if you have to look at the particular ships, apart from moving the seas, you have locks, canals. You know, we have 3-4 different canals. We have the St. Lawrence seaways. We have a number of dredgers, cranes, and cargo equipment. And besides that, you have dry docks as well as workshops. And if you have to take this particular infrastructure, of recent, we have the Northern Sea route of the Arctic Ocean, which has opened up and perhaps will give a big blow to the Suez Canal transits in the near future. And also, we have service to society. And here I would like to mention the sentence made by the statement made by Timeo Metropolis, the Secretary General, the former Secretary General Emeritus of the IMO, that in the event that we did not have shipping, half the world would have starved and the other half would have frozen to death because of the cold winter. And so it is the shipping that moves oil, ore, grain, gas, and we have the manufactured goods coming in by the containers. And we have the leisure industry with the passenger ships and the cruise liners. And then we have energy. And with all the renewable energy which is coming from the sea, that is perhaps you take the wind energy, you take the marine solar parks, and you also take the geothermal energy that is generated through the tidal waves. And then you also have the offshore industry and also the marine spatial planning users, and all related to the sea. And then here I am particularly mentioning about the regulatory bodies. I mean, like, you know, we know the IMO, ILO, the WHO, but I would particularly would like to mention about the UNFCCC, that is the United Nations Framework Convention for Climatic Change. that is going to play a very big role, and which Lord Mountevans is stressed upon. And besides that, the World Customs Organization and the institutions which have a say as stakeholders in shipping, besides the ADR institutions and the legal teams of ship owners. Next slide, please. So once you have this particular, the stakeholders, I now come to the overview of trade. And then we will move on to shipping, then ports, and then we'll come to trends. So I would like to make a mention here that shipping is a business and an industry. Why is it that it is a what you call a business and industry? Because everywhere we are looking at the bottom line. And if we have to take the concept, we have to look in terms of the basic economics. And what is that? It is basically scarcity of resources. You have demand and supply, and then you have a particular choice. So if you have a demand and supply, I mean, demand comes from the trade, and the supply comes from the ships, and they have to have equal choice. So unless and until these match, there will be an imbalance. So I would like to mention to you the cargoes that have been carried across the seas last year was equal to $7 trillion. That is more than the GDP of the third largest economy in the world, that is Japan. And if in a rough count, I mean, we have to take $7 trillion and we have to take cost, insurance, and freight perhaps a rough basis at 10% of that. So our industry would be in a region of 0.7 trillion US dollars in value. So it is difficult to satisfy human appetite, and that is why we get in for theory of derived demand. Shipping revolves on derived demand. And what is this derived demand? In layman's terms, I would like to mention it that we would like to have electricity. And if you have to have electricity, we require coal. And that particular coal will be coming in with certain places which have the where you have coal abundantly in availability, as well as there's a particular place which we may not have. So that coal may be imported from Australia or South Africa to Japan or China. I mean, in the sense, and that electricity is maintained, and we use that particular electricity. So this derived demand is satisfied by shipping. So the second particular part about it is that it also explains to land, labor, capital, and enterprise. So I mean, demand and supply taken care of, we require a good shipbuilding industry. So unless and until you have ships built, and for that you require technical labor and labor also to run the ships. You also require finance, and that particular finance has to be competitive. I mean, in the sense, and these are basically long-term financial needs. Perhaps like if the life of a ship is 20 years, so you require a particular financing cash flow situation to be honored. If the returns have to be coming in a tenure of 7 years, so you have to look in terms of good, cheap finance. Then the other particular part about it is the economies of scale. The economies of scale are important because, I mean, we are talking on specified cargoes which have to be carried on specified ships. So bulk cargo, you have to carry on bulk carriers. I mean, the oil cargo in tankers and gas, I mean, the gas carriers, and the liners perhaps on the container ships or on general cargo or multi-purpose vessels. So this particular part has to be having economies of scale. And that particular economies of scale, you know fully well, Panamax is the maximum particular ship which can go through the Panama Canal. So you have a particular deadweight carrying capacity as well as the deadweight. Perhaps the Panamax, where you have the maximum number of containers which can be transiting. Same thing with the Suez Canal. or the maximum draft permitted in St. Lawrence Seaway or in Kiel Canal. So automatically you will have to take that particular cost, whether you will use the optimum carrying capacity of a ship to the cargo and to the passengers that are used. Next, please. So in this particular manner, I would like to offer you that shipping has to have international trade, and that particular trade pattern is you have it with the developed nations, the developing economies, and the emerging markets. So automatically, at the moment, you find a lot of shipbuilding. 93% of the shipbuilding is happening in China, Korea, as well as China, Korea, and Japan. So automatically, there will be a heavy demand of steel. So this particular growth pattern will be clustered. And this particular cluster, if you can understand by the types of trade flow, the WTO has classified the types of trade as three. That is, one, the manufacturing sector. The second one is the fuel and the mining sector, and the third one is agriculture. So basically, like, the wealth of nations today is by trade, and the vehicle for that is shipping. So the demand for shipping services will depend on the human appetite. And this human appetite, I would just like to compare with the Spanish flu, which took place 100 years ago, and the present particular situation. 1918, 1919, we had the Spanish flu. And in 1920, I mean, the people partied a lot. I mean, in the sense, what you call, they were just waiting to get out of the World War and that. But if you have to see the present condition after post-COVID, the demand for manufactured goods have shot up drastically during the Christmas period, that the demand for container shipping has increased fantastically, because the freight rates from China, from Shanghai to Northern Europe have gone threefold. So automatically, it's all the human appetite that we have to satisfy. Economic models, I mean, in the sense, we would like to take a simple example between absolute and comparative advantage. I mean, say, for example, India cannot compete in shipbuilding. So absolutely, we are at a, we are better off in services like software, technology. But whereas, I mean, in the sense, it's better for us comparatively to import or buy a ship from the shipbuilding economies, and perhaps export our software services. And transport costs factor to international trade. I just mentioned, I gave you a rough idea about 10% as a CIF value, cost insurance freight value, or 10%, and how much it would do. But it does make a lot of difference as to be competitive, to make sure that, ultimately everybody wants a ton of coal or a ton of iron ore at the cheapest level. So ultimately, because your finished product, see, for example, I spoke to you about generation of electricity. So if your coal becomes expensive, automatically you will be paying a higher price for the electricity that is being generated for your manufacturing industry. So the next particular part about you
कौन है?
have to mention, I spoke to you about
क्या बात नहीं
the
करना है?
wealth of nations. The wealth of nations
क्या वही तो तुम्हारी बेस्ट
is
फ्रेंड
by
थी?
trade. And ultimately, you have to understand money, and you have to have a stable economy. None of us would like to be in a state like Zimbabwe or Venezuela, where the inflation
फोन पे?
rates is heavy. So you have to look in terms of having a good bookkeeping, and you would like to have asset and liabilities. You would like to have a strong currency, because as a ship owner, you would like to mention that you would like to have a stable currency where you would like to have the least fluctuation. You would like to have net earnings, I mean revenue, in your local place where you are residing. So it is very important that you have a good trade and you have a very surplus, so that, you become one of the strong economies of the world. So ultimately, everybody has to pay back for the loans that they have taken. So you have to make sure that the exchange rate remains stable. And this is a part of the shipping and trade fundamentals. The next slide, please. So let us look at the world trade scenario. At this particular time, we have had a weakening global growth of averaging, which has been about 3% 2016, 2017, and 2018. But due to the tensions that took place in the 2019, and then we also had the Asian swine flu, we had the whale dam which burst in Brazil. I mean, the growth was just around 2.5% as per the UNCTAD report. And we had about 2.8% as projected by the IMF. So if you have to look at what happened after the global financial crisis in 2009, I mean, like, there has been a study. I mean, like, we never recovered from that global financial crisis. Our projection was just hovering around 3%. So if you have to look at what was projected in January 2020 by WTO, we were expecting a growth of 3.3%. But then what happened from January to May, the entire global development GDP dropped to 17.7% compared to in May 2019, compared to minus 19% in 2009, where that was the year where Lehman Brothers collapsed. So, however, I mean, like, we don't expect anything good to happen. I mean, rather, what do you call, like, any good results to come out of the 2020 year. So, which the IMO as the UNCTAD has predicted it's around minus 4.3%. The IMF has predicted about 4.4% has been the average if you have to take the credit ratings as well as the different organizations. So World Economic Outlook is minus 4.4%. And however, the World Economic Outlook growth projections for 2021 is 5.2%. Next, please. I mean, like, if you had to, what do you call, like, see the last particular slide, the last item was World Economic Outlook growth projection was in 2020, we were going to have minus 4.4%. And what was predicted was for 2021 was about 5.2%. So the advanced economies, I mean, like, are having a negative growth of minus 5.8%. And in 2021, they are expected to be at and whereas with the emerging markets, we will be having the emerging markets, we will be having the 2019 growth at 3.7 and minus 3.3 in 2020, and 2021 is 6%. However, if you have to look at the bar chart, the bar chart gives the GDP outlook. So roughly, I mean, if you see how the growth has gone in the last 2019 to 2020, there has been a drastic fall. And if you see this particular line of the seaborne trade, the seaborne trade has actually taken a dip in 2009. That is, I mentioned about to you about the world financial crisis, the collapse of the Lehman Brothers. And then onwards, this particular pattern, again, you see a drop in the seaborne trade. So shipping and maritime trade, they follow each other. I mean, rather, the seaborne trade follows the world trade. Next slide, please. So the next particular part about the aspect is, let us look at the shipping as a pivot in an interdependent world. So what are the highlights? At the moment, we roughly, like, whenever you say that we have about 100,000 ships, I mean, the exact figures as per the UNCTAD 2020 report was that we had 98,140 ships, and we had 80,000 commercial ships, the rest being, we have offshore vessels, you have passenger vessels, but the total capacity is about 2.1 billion deadweight. I mean, and for which this particular 81 million deadweight was added last year as per Jan 2020 statistics. So let us have a rough average fleet age, because Lord Mountevans has mentioned that there's going to be a very crucial period from 2030 to 2050, because that is where we'll require a lot of finance to come in. So you just have an average fleet age, which is also going to be projected in the later part of the slides. We are only in slide 8. We have to go up to slide 15. So when you are going to look at it, we have a bulk carrier age of 9.28. We have a container of 9.91, tanker 10.38, and general cargo at 19.46. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the global fleet value, I mean, for containers, but in real terms, I mean, in the sense 2016, the container fleet was valued at $4.6 billion. And in 2025, container fleet is expected to be 11 billion. So if you have to take the container, these particular ships, which are 9.91 years today, it's in the region of about 7 billion US dollars. And if you have to take the losses of Carnival Corporation, the cruise line, I mean, which owns Princess, Ida, couple of the the losses of Carnival Corporation last year alone was 5 billion US dollars, and they will be able to survive this whole year. So you can just imagine how much of money is at stake, and what is the pandemic effect on shipping. So if you have to look at another particular aspect is, I would like to mention to you the average vessel sizes from 20 years to the last 4 years. The oil tankers have grown 9 times bigger, container ships have been 4 times bigger, and bulk carriers have been twice as big. So why I'm trying to make the statement is, when this average vessel sizes are changing, are we actually prepared to have this particular change for ports? And where do we in India stand when this type particular sizes keep changing? So automatically you have to look in terms of which are the particular ports in the world which are getting geared up for the changes of the ship sizes. And that, I would say that Singapore is addressing this particular problem very well. Next slide, please. So, like, I would like to mention to you that, like, what you call, we have trade on one side and we have ships on the other. So, I mean, this demand and supply equilibrium has to be maintained. So, I mean, in the event, what has happened because of this COVID pandemic, in this whole year, the values have come down by 41% by way of ship orders. So the total value that you had up till November was $33 billion of new shipbuilding contracts. But however, you had a good placement of ships being built, $33 billion in December. But the world yards have taken a hit, and out of which almost, I mean 40 and odd yards had to be closed. So at the moment, we have just about 364 shipyards in the market. The order book has shrunk. I mean, the deliveries have been faster, and the waiting period is just about 2.4 years. So what will happen perhaps is that there is going to be a sudden shortage of new delivery of ships. You may ask me why. So you have a look at this particular part. At the moment, the new buildings are just around 7.2%. But you require replacement tonnage, because our annual trade growth is, I mean, for the 3% trade growth, you require a 10% growth in tonnage. So automatically, there's going to be a very inelastic market that is going to follow in the next few years. And this particular part has also affected the price drop. I mean, the price drop in, like, if I've been following the markets in the last month alone, I mean, a price of VLCC has dropped from $92 million to about $85 million. A Cape size vessel has dropped by 6% from 49 million to 46, as well as that of a 21,000 TEU vessel from 146 million to 142. Now here I would like to mention to you, I mentioned to you that 93% of the shipbuilding is focused between China, Japan, and Korea. But at the same time, the same way that you also have a demolition market, and that demolition market, 83% of it comes to India and Bangladesh, and the other particular 7% goes to Turkey. So automatically at the moment, because of the shortage of steel, I mean, China is importing a lot of scrap steel. The prices of steel has gone up. I mean, there has been a 40% increase in price of steel. And so automatically the price of scrap, I mean, has gone up even up to $500 for LDT tonnage. Next slide, please. So let's have a quick look at the Indian perspective. I mean, in the sense, we should understand where we stand. I mean, in the sense, there's a lot of focus given to Indian shipping. But unfortunately, I mean, the situation does not look to be encouraging. I mean, and we have a long way to go. I mean, I would like to here mention that, in deadweight carrying capacity, we are just about 1.26% of the world tonnage carrying capacity, and we occupy number 18 position. And then even by way of flag registration, which is very important because it gives a lot of employment to Indian seafarers on Indian bottoms. I mean, in the sense, we are just at 2% of the world flag registrations. And we do not figure, I mean, I hope that India very soon will come into the top 25 shipping economies, where it is led by Greece, Japan, China, US, Norway, and then Singapore takes the next place, Germany at number 7, and I think the efforts of Lord Jeffrey Mountevans, UK is at the number 8th position. So I mean, in the sense, we have a long way to become a shipping economy. And the average age, I mean, you all had a rough idea about the average age of ships between bulk carriers, containers. They were all 10 years to 11 years in the bulk sector, tanker and bulk carrier and the container sector. But whereas the average age of ships of the Indian ownership is about 14.3 years, 14.3 years. Then, I mean, if you have to take the port sector, we are only one port makes in the top 30 list of the top container ports in the world. I mean, with handling about 5 million TEUs. And if you have to look at the Indian cargo carried, that's about 975.54 million tons, and out of which only 7.1 is carried by the Indian tonnage. So, I mean, we have a tremendous market, I mean, in the sense for Indian flagships to carry Indian cargo. And so perhaps we will like to have a similar particular type of a single window agency, or rather a one-stop shop, a holistic approach where we can make a maritime India outlook, and so that we catch up with the rest of the top 25 shipping economies of the world. Next slide, please. Incidentally, I would like to mention to you that in the shipbuilding industry, that India does not even figure in the 1% list, or we are less than 1% of tonnage built in the world in the shipbuilding industry. So, so what are the challenges that the shipping will face in the next decade? So I would like to emphasize that the biggest challenge everybody is talking about is the what do you call, like climatic change. I'm in the intergovernmental panel on climatic change, IPCC, and the UNFCCC, where the temperature of the earth will be brought down by 1.5 degree centigrade, as well as 50% of the carbon emissions by 2050. So I mean, in the sense, we are having that. So sulfur 2020 has been introduced. The other particular part, what is in the news, that we had the crew of Jaganand, which has just returned safely from China, which was stuck in China. We have another particular ship, an Anastasia of MSC, where the crew has got tremendous travel restrictions, which actually acts as an extra burden on the seafarers as well as on the ship owners, and ultimately it passes down to the end user. Cyber security is a major concern, friends. I mean, those of you who have followed trade winds, you would have known that cyber security, I mean, the cyber frauds have quadrupled in the last 1 year in the last 1 year, and the cyber security will be a major challenge to which we have to follow. We have spoken about artificial intelligence, and then we have the major developments which are coming about are the marine automated surface ships. Well, that is the automatic ships, the unmanned ships. You're going to have drones which will be coming in. You'll be having e-navigation, where navigation will be on from the shore, where it's you have air traffic control systems. So air traffic control systems, you'll also be having the shore control systems. And what I look at, the biggest challenge that is going to follow is in 2018, there was an UN agreement where within the supplement of the UNCLOS, United Nations Convention for Law of the Sea, there will be a new particular law which will be brought in, that is for the biodiversity in sea areas beyond national jurisdiction. So that as a ship, you will be flying a particular flag of a country, island, floating island theory, where the legislation, the Merchant Shipping Act, will be applicable to you. And then when you go to a coast state, then EEZ will be applicable. But after that, now there will be a particular regulation that will be brought in, which will be protection and sustainable use of the oceans. So here they have formed an International Maritime Research and Development Board with $5 billion to come in for the revolution for propulsion, which will be the fourth propulsion revolution after wind, coal, and oil. So perhaps what with this particular part, we will take it up in the next slide. So we have finished with the trades and the ports. And here I would like to have what it is for the stakeholders. How does each particular stakeholder look at the port? I mean, in the sense, if you have to take it, how does a seafarer take it? For a seafarer, I mean, in the sense, a port is a place where he will sign on and sign off a ship, a contract of articles of agreement. That's his employment starts. And whereas if you have to take that of a ship, I mean, a ship, it is ultimately is interested in making business. I mean, the ship wants to earn freight. So for a ship, a port is a place where it is a loading and unloading point. I mean, in the sense, it is the gateway for trade. So the next particular part is the shipper. For the shipper is the interface between land and water transport. And this particular point is where the risk passes. It is also, it gives a particular where the title can pass, like whether it is a free on board. I mean, in the sense, who becomes the owner of the cargo. So for a shipper and for a receiver, I mean, ultimately at the time of the discharging, it is an interface. And it's also a particular mode of water transport, where the land transport ends and the water transport starts. For a passenger, we see many movies, I mean, in the sense what you call how it is to get onto a passenger berth or a cabin. And for an economist, it's a gateway to international trade. I mean, for an economist, I mean, in the sense he automatically, like, will look in terms finally when it comes to balance of trade, balance of payments, exchange rates, all that happens with the statistics from your customs. So automatically, like, it is the gateway for international trade, I mean, the port and the administration. And then we also have the administration, which is actually looking in nation building. I mean, in the sense when you have a particular, it's an asset, it's a temple of what do you call temple of the country. So automatically it adds to the coffer of nation building. For a port manager, it will be a business model, and for the labor, it can be in different types of labor. Perhaps if you are in a container terminal, you could be what do you call that on a pilot vessel. So automatically there is a, and also to the longshoremen. So automatically there is direct as well as indirect employment. And then I mean, like, port, I mean, also has its two bits. Also, the biggest problem ports have is act of terrorism as well as smuggling. It's a point where stowaways board. I mean, like, so it has got a particular problem, drug, narcotics in smuggling. So that is why you have the ISPS code coming in. And ultimately, like, today shipping has moved from what do you call, like, end-to-end logistics. So you also have the multimodal operator coming into the ports sector. So can I have the next slide, please? So understanding port management. So, like, the what do you call, like, every port has to have cargoes and ships, but they have to match. I mean, in the sense what you call, first of all, you have to have a particular cargo matching the berth as well as to the ship. So the relevant particular part, and when I talk about it has to be like, whether if you are having what is the size of an Aframax or a Suezmax or that of a bulk carrier, Kamsar, or whatever the Handymax, each particular vessel has to match. The port operations ultimately, like, look in terms of a safe port. I mean, you look in terms of a tendering a notice of readiness. So from that tendering a notice of readiness of an arrived ship, I mean, in the sense, like, you look at a particular point where you would like to have a safe boarding of a pilot as well as a disembarking of a pilot right up to the channel or a fairway buoy. Port finances, I mean, like, we are looking in terms of basic economics. It's an enterprise. Ultimately, bottom line is everybody is there to make money and profits. Then the legal aspects of it, we have wet shipping and dry shipping. So it's in the port where dry shipping ends and then the wet shipping starts. Then you also have a lot of what do you call legal implications, whether it is the MARPOL or whether it is the Labor Act, where the ILO legislations will come in, and also the IMDG. I mean, like, you have to look in terms of the international maritime dangerous goods. I mean, in the sense what you call, like, those particular authorities will be coming into port competition. I mean, each particular port would like to market themselves, whether you are a 24/7 port or whether you are a deep draft port. I mean, that is the particular marketing, the competition that has, as well as if you have to market. I mean, what is your unique selling part? I mean, in the sense point. So each particular part has to look in terms of marketing. Perhaps you're good in a particular sector, you would like to take that advantage, what is called the absolute advantage or the comparative advantage. And I just mentioned to you that, like, the way the sizes of ships, the style of ships are changing. I mean, in the sense, we will like to have appropriate planning as well as port equipment. Planning, I mean, in the sense there is a continuous, whether it is operational dredging or whether it is capital dredging, I mean, like, new berths. So that particular part you have to keep in touch, as well as equipment. I mean, in the sense what you call the sizes of ships. So if you had gantry cranes which were catering to the 12,000, 14,000 TEU vessels, and if you today you are having the 21 to 24,000 TEU vessels. Okay, will your gantry cranes reach, or do you have depth? So you got to have appropriate port equipment, and where you have to be turnaround time has to be absolutely good. And so everybody is there because the next slide will tell you how important it is because you ultimately are having to pay vessel related charges, you have to pay berth hire charges, you have to pay office charges, all that will add to costs. And then ultimately you have port ownership. Port ownership, I mean, like, you have private ports, you have landlord ports, you have tool ports, and then you have the service ports, which is very common in India, the service ports providing an entire service from beginning till the end of the operations. Next slide, please. So understanding port management we have come across, but if you have a very good what do you call system, port management sector into place, then you have the KPIs or the performance indicators. And how will we monitor these particular key performance indicators? The performance, I mean, in the sense what you call, like, those of you who are economist students, the cost rate theory has been conceptualized by R. Sanchez in 2003. In the cost rate theory, performance of seaports is an important determinant of trade costs and connectivity. So it's not only trade that is important, connectivity is also equally important because many of the goods have to reach the hinterland. And the more seamless it is, the better. I mean, the cost pricing ratio will be. So less time spent in port is always good. So the last particular year, we had an improvement of 0.41% on general time spent in port by ships. So it's come down from 0.97 days to 0.96 days. I mean, this is only for commercial ship. I mean, the passenger ships are excluded. So the faster the turnaround effectively is, it also improves your through output. I mean, it's a simple particular calculation. I mean, in the ship coming with a cargo, and then less time it discharges. So port efficiency, prompt turnaround time bring about a competitive port. And in this particular case, the challenge that is going to come about is the World Port Sustainable Program and for your United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Friends, those of you who would be aware, in 2018, 17 what do you call Sustainable Development Goals were agreed upon, and those particular sustainable goals have to be achieved by 2030. So ports have implemented that, and for that we have the Environment Ship Index. I mean, that particular part is both. One is ESI and EEDI. So automatically Energy Efficiency Design Index, I mean, in the sense what you call, like, phase 2 and phase 3. Those of you who've been following the news, I mean, in the sense Japan has got a very good competitive edge in building phase 3 vessels of EEDI. What is this EEDI? It is basically the engine power ratio to the cargo carrying capacity and how much of the carbon emissions that are taking place. And this is a big challenge for Indian ship owning as well as for the Indian ports, because we have to compete, because the International Airport Authority for Ports and Harbors, Association for Ports and Harbors, they are already implementing this WPSP. I mean, and ports like Rotterdam, Antwerp, and the Northern European ports are following this program for the Sustainable Development Goals. So this particular part is another particular challenge for in the Indian context. Next slide, please. So, I mean, like, this is what, I mean, like, especially for the trends. Now, I'm taking you to an era of 100 years. I mean, in the sense, if there has been one single trend, I mean, in the sense, what you call, which has changed shipping, or like, it has changed the world markets, I want you to go back for 100 years. It is said that we learn from the past, live in the present, and plan for the future. So if you have to learn from the past, just look back what happened 50 years ago. And 50 years ago in 1967, we had the third Arab-Israeli war and the Yom Kippur War, which was the fourth Arab-Israeli war. And at that particular time, Suez Canal got hit, and then it had to be closed. And then again, what happened at that particular time was the prices of oil went from 2 barrels $2 to the barrel to $4. I mean, it was a sudden overnight jump. And then at the next war, it went from $4 to $10. I mean, like, and at the same time, Suez Canal was closed. So you can just imagine what you call, like, a Suez Canal closed, a trip from Bombay to UK. I mean, it was practically became 2 months via the Cape. And whereas if it was through Suez, perhaps it was a much lesser period of time. So, and then what do you call, it was there were no ships available. The shipping was at its boom. So that is one particular trend which changed the entire shipping scenario. Then oil became a very, very delicate commodity. And then there were Israeli sanctions. Then, like, wars were fought comparatively for oil. I mean, in the sense, what you call, you had the Iran revolution in 1979, then which led to the Iran-Iraq war. You had the, 1990 Kuwait invasion at the same time. You also had a little before that, 1988 or something, you had the Exxon Valdez issue where the OPA Oil Pollution Act of 1990 came into the US factor. Then you had the World Trade Center being attacked, the 9/11 incident, collapse of 2 major world companies. And, like, every 10 years, I've just given you a particular this thing, and you look back at this particular, I gave you the chart of UNCTAD, of the GDP growth versus seaborne trade. And then that world financial crisis effect also had this particular Deepwater Horizon spill. I mean, in the sense where, like, the question of liability of pollution happening on a seabed from a, from a well. So then, like, that was 10 years ago. And this particular part, I mean, in the sense, we are at the moment, 2020, all of us are very, very informed of the COVID pandemic. So automatically, like, this has also followed up that it has become IMO 20 global sulfur cap, where, I mean, the type of very low sulfur has to be used. And ultimately, like, what will happen in the next 10 years is that, I mean, like, we have to achieve the sustainable development goals, and that is 40% emission cut. I mean, like, new buildings are going to come in, and, like, I mentioned to you that the $5 billion research, International Maritime Research Development Fund, hopefully by that time there will be a new particular propulsion, which will be, whether it is green ammonia, whether it is LNG, I don't think that will happen, whether it is going to be hydrogen, whether it is gray hydrogen, blue hydrogen, or green hydrogen. I mean, the gray is basically from fossil fuel. The blue is basically where the the carbon dioxide from the fossil fuel is captured and controlled, and the green hydrogen is perhaps from water alone, which will be the new mode of propulsion, or whether it will be batteries, we do not know. But ships will move with from 2030 onwards. New buildings will start, a lot of the tonnage will have to go. And by 2050, the greenhouse gas emissions will be cut down by 50% compared to 2008. And then we will be having zero carbon fuel technologies. I mean, like, in in conformity to the IPCC Paris Agreement. And ultimately, in 2070, we will be looking at a green world economy. So we will be basically looking at green trade, green shipping, and green world. In lighter vein, I mean, I would like to wish all of you listeners and seafarers language, blue skies, green lights, and many fathoms below the sea, which is below fathoms is the greenish, bluish waters. So let's all talk green for the future. Thank you for a patient listening, one and all. Good evening.
Thank you, Captain Menezes. That was indeed a comprehensive perspective. Thank you, sir, for your invaluable insights. The floor is now open to all of you. We look forward to your questions with Captain Ramakrishnan as the moderator.
Yeah, thank you, Arti. I have a few questions which I gleaned from the chat, and also which some people have written in advance. I think almost all the subjects have been covered by Captain John. But I would have the first question, which I would think would be more appropriate if it is answered by Dr. Malini Shankar. Well, there has been a request on that. Is it, how has the IMU addressed the changes brought in by COVID on shipping and training? It's more to do with how, is there any changes in the way people are being trained by IMU and obviously by other institutions also which follow IMU?
Perhaps you can switch the questions and
Yeah,
what do you call
I have the next question.
We will answer the question.
I'll respond on behalf of Indian Maritime University.
Yes.
We had a difficult time, of course, and then slowly things got adapted. Students have been listening to the lessons online. Though it was a very sudden change, some students took some time to adapt. But over the months, about 3 to 4 months time down the line, we were comfortable with that. Our examination got delayed a bit, appraisals got delayed a bit. But maybe about 2 to 3 months time lag, we are there almost. The next year, by end of 2021, we should come back to normal track. That's one part. Second part is because of the online course, there is some changes in the quality. Everybody agrees. Nothing like a face-to-face interaction with the teacher. So to adopt that, some more minor tweaking has been done in the way of assessment. With the new measures taking over in the middle of the pandemic. We also got some new system of examining and assessing the students in the final year as well as in the middle semesters. We hope this will not have a lasting effect on the students' capability as such.
Thank you, sir. I think that was a very clear answer as to what is the current situation.
I would just like to add, the major challenge comes in actually conducting workshop classes and taking practical exams, and that is common to every single institution which is involved in science and technology. But going forward, I think there have to be some innovations and changes in pedagogy to look at blended learning, to look at online plus in-person classes, etc. This will be a great gain in the future for the education sector.
Thank you, madam. I think that was a very, very good answer from IMU itself and from yourself. Thank you. I have the next question, which I would say it is directed towards Captain Menezes. It comes from Captain Oliver Menezes. Is asking you, growth in traffic versus growth in capacity. Are we maintaining an equilibrium in Indian ports?
I would say, unfortunately, no. I mean, I just mentioned to you that, we are just carrying 7% of the, we're carrying only about 7% on the Indian bottom. And, we require a lot, on infrastructure. The first thing starts with maintaining good drafts. I mean, in the sense, what you call, when you take a look at a vessel's fixture, I mean, in the sense, if I'm assured of a particular draft, and then I am touching bottom and safely aground or something, that the fixture itself gets affected from there. And then the thing is, I mentioned to you about the cranes and the type of vessels that have happened. We have not kept up with the times. We are perhaps, I mean, in the sense, we need to invest a lot, perhaps. With privatization and we will be in a better wicket. So we have to, I mean, we have to pull up our socks if you have to come up to the top 25 shipping economies in the world.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I have a question from Mr. Chittaranjan. I don't know whether whether Lord Jeffrey Mountevans would like to answer. I don't know. I have just asked this question on his behalf. Autonomous shipping. When will it really start taking effect, and how will it affect a few points? One is seafaring employment, and also how the stakeholders in shipping will evolve. Okay. Okay, Captain John.
No, Lord Jeffrey, with your permission, sir, I would just like to mention to you that the concerned person, I mean, authority on autonomous ship is actually on in this particular panel. That is the CEO of Nautical Institute, John Lloyd, and he would be the best person. But however, perhaps by 2030, I mean, in the sense, those of you who have followed Seaway magazines, they have actually given this particular models which have been going about on Mars. I spoke to you about marine automated surface ships. So, but then, I mean, ultimately, I mean, in the sense, what you call like, we saw a pandemic. And then, like, you know, what you call like, we have realized what is the effect of the Q flag. My vessel is healthy and requires free pratique. I mean, in the sense, what you call, I don't know how the underwriters will take it. So unless and until every particular risk is underwritten, I mean, in the sense, what you call, they will have perhaps, I feel that, like, you know, the manpower will be reduced. I mean, but ultimately to have what you call unmanned ships, I think it'll be difficult, because with this artificial intelligence and cyber security, I mean, like, you know, what you call, you will require a particular person to man the ships throughout.
I think
That's
I
my
agree.
opinion.
Yes. Yes. Even running a
Lord Jeffrey,
presentation.
would you like to add, sir?
Well, thank you very much. You know, they are already in existence, autonomous vessels, believe it or not. There are one or two. I mean, in Norway, the company that I worked with when I was, before going to university, which is now called Yara, they're having a vessel that can transport chemicals, fertilizers, a short distance completely autonomously. So it does happen. But I think that all these great technological changes, of course, they're always rather alarming at first. But I remember, for example, in my own firm in Clarkson's, when we started moving to sort of, electronic data. And I remember my managing director, when I was in tech, was saying, well, the thing is, we're not going to have to employ telex operators anymore, which, and he thought this was going to save us money. And first of all, we thought it was rather sad, because these people worked very long hours and weren't paid very much. But of course, they were replaced by people who were paid a great deal more. And I think that the point about AI is it points to the importance of skilling. The drive to cut costs does result in some ways in reduction of manpower, but then better jobs come in, more interesting jobs. But it also points to a great need for us to train our people, to skill our people to take advantage of those jobs. So, it is happening. I very much agree with you, John Menezes. I think that, safety is so important, but I can see more and more being done remotely. We're seeing already moves from big organizations to gather data from ships and evaluate them on shore and so on, to reduce some of the functions and some of the manpower on ships.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And I have two questions from Swaminathan. Aarti, I hope we have some time for it.
We have about 3 to 4 minutes.
Okay, then this, I think John would be appropriate person. This is from Mr. Swaminathan, ICS. With a tilt in the global trade causing shift in the supply chain demographics, would it be ideal to consider realigning the trade routes with appropriate weightages and consider fresh indexes being worked out?
Well, I mean, like I spoke about the Northern Sea route being opened. I mean, like, it's a similar thing, like, what do you call, everybody was fearing about Brexit. I mean, what will happen to maritime London? And so, I mean, like, the people assured that nothing will go wrong. I mean, so even if the clusters move, I mean, like, even if the cargo moves, using the Northern Sea route, and like, I don't think that, what do you call, there will be fresh index part, because I mean, in the sense, we have the Shanghai Container Freight Index, as well as a couple of the indexes, I mean, in the sense, from Singapore. So, I mean, it is going to remain like this for some time, because I mean, like, you have to understand the US administration. I mean, in the sense, the new incoming what do you call, transport secretary, that is Pete Pete Buttigieg. I mean, in the sense he has mentioned there's not going to be changes. They're going to, in fact, strengthen the Jones Act. So, I mean, like, I think it is going to have normalcy. And I don't think there will be shift in fresh indexes coming out for the near future. I mean, like, you know, they will be, because they are tested, the time tested. I mean, in the sense, what you call, like, you know, you look at the VLCC market, which is has it up and down last year. So I mean, in the sense, I mean, like, you know, if you are a, perhaps I'm not a Lord Jeffrey has been Director Clarkson's, he would have been the better person to have addressed this issue. Would you like to say something, sir, on this about the new index?
I'm sorry. Do you know, I'm embarrassed because sometimes looking at the chat, you miss things. What was the question about the indexes, John?
The question was, it's like this. Can I just read it so that it's here?
Thank you.
With the changes in the global trade causing shift in the supply chain demographics, would it be ideal to consider realigning the trade routes with appropriate weightages and consider fresh indexes being worked out?
Oh, thank you. Well, in fairness, I think that the Baltic Exchange, which sets the principal indices, constantly looks at this, and I know that, you know, they trial new ones from time to time, and they do try to keep them up to date. So I think that if a demand comes for additional indices, I don't doubt for a minute that they will study that, and, you know, if they think it's appropriate, they will do it. But I think they try very hard to be up to date, and you know, with what market requires. Fundamentally, these, of course, for the settlement of future freight contracts. And you know, I think they're doing a pretty good job, if I may say. But I'm sure there's people online who are more expert than I am. I'm not an expert on freight derivatives. I'm too old, sir, for that. You know, I need to be about 20 or 30 years younger to be an expert on these things.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. With Arti's permission, one last question. This is
with last, and you can wrap it up, Captain Ram.
Yeah, Captain John. This is something which you already covered in your presentation. India, with such a large coastline and exports exceeding 500 billion, and a large seas, India's share in total world debt rate is around 1%, same as what you said. And with even now the second biggest company going on a sale. What needs to be done to change this balance, that India participate more in the, not only in trade, but in carrying of the trade?
I would say, I mean, like, you know, good shipping policy. I mean, in a sense, what you call, like, you know, we require a stronger maritime constituency. So automatically, like, you know, we need to have organization like, you know, single window agency, which is like Maritime India. So in one go, I mean, in the sense it represents all the maritime sectors. I mean, in the sense, so we cannot have compartmentalized outlook. And second particular part, our biggest problem is ship finance. I mean, in the sense when Japan, Germany are getting, I mean, what do you call, loans at 1% to 2%. I mean, where are we talking about? I mean, at 10, 11%. I mean, in the sense, what do you call, that's our biggest setback. Over.
Yes, sir. I think that gives a kind of, it actually gives explanation to the problem. But of course, solving the problem calls for many more heads to get together. And as you said, possibly a Maritime India is required. I think with that, I will stop the questions because I still have another 5 more, but I think we are running out of time.
We can reply by email to them. I mean, like, you know,
I have it collated and I'll pass it on to you. Yeah. Thank you very much. And that will be the end of the question and answer session. I would hand over the mic to Arati for taking it on from here.
Arati, please.
A few words about Captain Ramakrishnan, who moderated the Q&A so well. He's a managing director and country manager for Benline India, and he has wide overview of various aspects of shipping, especially with liners, and is fellow of the ICS UK. Thank you, sir, for moderating the session. I would also like to place on record that we had about 600 registrants for this seminar, with 275 participating in the meeting this afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. And thank you is such a beautiful word, and who better than Dr. Shivakolundu, Professor, School of Naval Architecture and Ocean Engineering, IMU, to do the honors. Over to you, sir.
I think he's on mute. Yeah.
And on behalf of IMU, I wish to express my gratitude to Lord Mountevans for his having graced the occasion and also having shared his vast experience, thoughts from his vast experience. And then today's program was a brainchild of our Vice Chancellor. After having heard somewhere about this one program, she was so fired up. She said that we must have this in our IMU. And not just one, a series of it. So she is one among the many other pushes that she is giving to the system to make this university not in the next plane. Okay, thank you, madam. Then about the speaker. I'm less qualified to comment on this area of coverage. It's really a vast area that you have covered so excellently in a very simple manner so that the students can partake. And this is a time when we have enrolled the students. The students are coming in, freshers are being enrolled. And what better time than to have the students introduced to such an area in such a simple manner. And they are the students of aspiring seafarers and marine professionals. And definitely this event would have widened their horizon. And it's going to go a long way, even for us, not only the students, even for our faculty and other people who are not directly involved in the shipping and trading. But we do have a stake in it, and we do want to have more information about that. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Captain Menezes, for this excellent presentation. And at last, for having this event culminating in such a nice way, I wish to thank our colleagues from ICS 2, Retd Narayanan, and Mr. Narayanan for Ramakrishnan for moderating. And at last, I wish to thank all the participants who have spent their time and for their attention. Thank you very much. Thanks, Varunda.
Thank you, Mr. Capt also. And my take home for the day is be unflappable irrespective of the disturbances that come in between when you're presenting. Just be focused. There's a lot of disturbances. Apologies for that. Yeah.
No, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank
Aarti,
you.
would like to mention that it will be available on YouTube. I mean, just.
Yes, the recording will be available on YouTube maybe in a couple of days' time, and we will send the link of the recording to all the registrants that we have received. And I'd like to say that all good things come to an end, and we hope to meet all of you again soon. Until then, keep smiling. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shankar. Thank you, Lord Jeffrey Mountevans. Good day.
Thank you, sir.
And a lovely weekend.
Yeah.